Hello, welcome back. This is your host, Dr. Tulipa Mwenfumbo, and we continue looking at education foundation, and we are specifically looking in the history of education. So today we are starting module 7, which we are looking at industrialization and mass education, which spans from 17th century to 20th century. Remember, this is program is being sponsored or brought to you by Mukuba College of Education, and we are offering intensive diploma in teaching methodology. So, if you want to get your diploma in teaching methodology, you can contact us on 0976 and this program is partly sponsored by Alliance for World Missions. So let's continue. Industrialization and mass education are closely linked as the need for an educated workforce arose during the Industrial Revolution. There was a need that they should be able to bring in a new curriculum and the change in the education. So some of the forecast that was forecast on during industrialization and mass education is it was forecast on industrialization and mass education, which included workforce development, preparing workers for industrial jobs, and emphasizing basic literacy, numeracy, and also vocational skills. It also emphasized on the efficiency and standardization and implementation scientific management of principles of education. Now let's go into the lesson 8, which is industrialization period, which spans from 17th century to 20th century. This is your host, Dr. Tulipo Mwenifumbo. You can WhatsApp me if you want any clarification or you want to join our trainings on 0 plus 26097618123 plus 2609761811253. The industrialization period, also known as the Industrial Revolution, spans from the 18th century to the 19th century approximately. So this is divided into three categories. There is first industrial revolution, which was mechanization and steam power, which started in 1760 to 1840. Then we have got the second industrial revolution, which was mass production and technological achievement, which was 1840 to 1870. Then we have got the third industrial revolution, which started in 1870 to 1914. So during the Industrial Revolution period, education underwent significant changes. Overall education during the Industrial Revolution period aimed to prepare workers for industrial jobs while also maintaining social order and control. And the focus was, number one, on expansion of education. More schools were built and education became more accessible to the general population. So during this period, education was not restricted as it was in other historical periods. In this time now, education became a general thing to anyone who wants to acquire it. So it also focused on practical skills. Education focused on teaching practical skills such as reading, writing, arithmetic, and vocational training. The emergence of new school types new types of schools emerged, including Sunday schools for working class children, then factory schools for children working in factories, then there were boarding schools for middle class children, and also technical schools for vocational training. The growth of literacy rates improved significantly, especially among the working class. Uh, Education for social control. Education was also used as a means of social control to teach workers discipline, obedience, and moral values. When we look at the limited access to education, we still had the challenge of they still had the challenge of women being limited in education. Education was not equally accessible to women and minorities who faced significant barriers to accessing education. So there were challenges in acquiring education. Though education was given to anyone, but it was very difficult for women because of the cultural grounds, and also for those other people, maybe the poor communities and also the rural communities, they had challenges in acquiring education. Now, when we look at the curriculum on this period of industrial revolution, during the Industrial Revolution period, the curriculum and teaching methods were shaped by the need for a skilled workforce and social control. So the curriculum had included the basic literacy and numeracy. It focused on reading, writing, and arithmetic and basic math. So literacy and numeracy was focused on their curriculum because there was a need that people should be able to have the reading skill and writing skills as they will be involved in industries and were becoming working class in these industries. Then there was vocational training, the emphasis on practical skills like carpentry, blacksmithing, and textile became part of the training. So this is where now the pupils they started doing what is called woodworks and needlework and other things. Then there were moral education, teaching of moral values, discipline, and obedience. And then the limited focus on science and humanities. So science and humanities were not prioritized except for the basic knowledge. So in this period, because science and humanities were not focused because they seemed to be irrelevant to the period, because in the industry they were not so much needed. We needed not no sciences in most industries, and there was no need for people to learn humanities because they were not relevant to industries. Teaching method. The teaching method reflected the industrial society's needs, prioritizing basic skills, discipline, and obedience over critical thinking, creativity, and student-centered learning. So the kind of instruction or the teaching method that was used during the industrialization period was now, number one, lecture-based instruction. Teachers lectured and students were expected to memorize and obey what the lecturer or the teacher was teaching. Then there was drill and repetition. Students practice skills through repetition and drill. Like there were things like I don't know if you have come across what is called fire drill, or what the fire brigades does in a skill. The other thing that was focused on the on teaching method was discipline and punishment. So there was corporal punishment and discipline were used to maintain order. So corporal punishment was used, and this has just recently ended. Even in our days, this continued as being part of education, where discipline and corporal punishment was part of education. Then the other thing was monitoring and supervision. Teachers closely monitored students' behavior and work. Then there was limited student-centered learning. Students' interests and needs were not prioritized. So the institutions or the lecturers taught the student what they want, not developing the skill of the student, but the student must follow instructions accordingly to what the instructor wants or according to the teacher's knowledge. Then institution, in those days we had there were institutions like elementary schools for working class children, focusing on basic literacy and numeracy. Then there were Sunday schools for working class children, providing basic education and moral instruction. Then there were factory schools for children working in factories, offering basic education and vocational training. Then there were emergence of boarding schools for middle class children, providing more comprehensive education. Now, this was for those well-to-do children from the well-to-do families. Then there were technical schools, which was for vocational training and apprenticeship. Then there were universities for the wealthy, offering advanced education in fields like medicine, law, and theology. The limited access for working class children. Education was not compulsory, and many worked instead of attending school. So children would prefer going for work, and they will not. Some of them did not access the education. Then gender disparities. Girls had limited access to education, especially in science and mathematics. Racial and ethnic disparities. Minorities groups faced significant barriers to accessing education, like those people that were minority and also the rural people. The urban and rural disparate. Urban areas had more education opportunities than the rural areas, because in the rurals there were no industries, so there was no need for this education to be common. Then economical barriers. Education was often expensive and limiting access for poor people. The reforms that took place, the reforms and initiatives, these reforms reflect the social and economical inequalities of the time, with education often serving as a tool for social control and maintaining the status quo. There was an act which was produced here, which was called Factory Acts, which came in 1833 and to 1874. This act regulated child labor and mandated education for factory children. So it was mandatory that children who are going for work, who are working in factories, must be able to acquire education in the factory. So the factories they had to provide children with the education of those children that were working. Then there was the Elementary Education Act, made education compulsory for children aged to 13 in England and Wales. So in the Elementary Education Act, which was in 1870, it was a mandatory. So every child was supposed to go to school in England, and it was any child between the age of 5 to the age of 13. Then there was charity schools. The charity schools provided education for poor children. So these schools were made to, because as we said that education was expensive, so they provided also the education for which was under the charity schools, and this was done mostly by religious institutions, like especially the Catholic. Then there were mechanics institutes, offered vocational training and adult education. Influential educators during this period, there were influential people like Joseph Resta, who developed the monitorial system where older students taught younger ones. So this education was introduced. Then we had Samuel Wardspin, who advocated for infant schools and emphasized play-based learning. Then there was Frederick Froebel, who developed the concept of kindergarten and emphasized student-centered learning. There was Robert Owen, advocated for free education for all children. Then there was Samuel Whitespan, who developed the concept of infant schools. Then there was Henry Bernard, advocated for compulsory education and teaching training. Thank you so much. And God bless you. This is your host, Dr. Tulipo Mwenfumbo. And remember to enroll if you want more courses with us. Thank you so much, and God bless you.